So, our early projects are very special, but I'm aware that one of your first houses that you made was super special. Uh, I would like to ask my audience if they can guess within how much budget did sir make that house? Anyone? Anyone wants to guess it? 30 lakhs. Wrong.
50 to 60,000.
Wrong. 10 lakhs? No. Okay. Sir, why don't you answer?
About one of the first houses that I made, the residence that you are mentioning about is actually very close to my heart. It's a very precious milestone in my whole career. As you know, I've done 10,000s of buildings, but this particular building that I'm going to talk about is very special to me. I made that house in just 10,000 rupees.
₹10,000. A house in 10,000 rupees. That's
There's an interesting story about this house, you know. When I started after my master's from Birmingham, after working with top-notch architects, I came back to my place, Trivandrum, and I started Habitat Technology Group. Rest of it is history. But then I was very clear about what I want to do in my life. Sustainability probably is a worn-out word now, but those days I wanted my buildings to be as sustainable as possible. I was talking about eco-sensitive architecture, I was talking about energy-efficient architecture, I was talking about cost-efficient architecture, I was talking about resource-efficient architecture, I was talking about value-based architecture. I wanted to do that only, you know. I had made that choice, and there were no takers for that. I had to wait for, I'm telling you, I had to wait for 6 long months after taking my master's from England, having come out with such sterling colors. I had to wait for 6 long months to get my first client. There is this philosopher, a German philosopher, who said, between 1 and 0, 1 and none, there's an infinity. That's the distance that I cross. You know, this distance between 1 and 0, I remember that because it was a great wait. And then something happened. One of my friends, who was actually a member of one film society,
okay.
And I was also in the cultural field at that time. He told me one day, Shankar, look, I got a small bit of land on the beach, 1.5 cents of land. You know how much 1.5 cents of land is around 60 square meters of plot. He came to me, he said, I don't have money, Shankar. I have 1.5 cents of land. And all I have, all my physical assets, was a number of books that he had acquired over the period of time. He was a writer. Just for your information, he was the first person, he was a freelance journalist. He was the first person who actually introduced Laurie Baker to Kerala. Laurie Baker was there, but one person who really introduced the legacy of Laurie Baker as the poor man's architect to Kerala population. And he was convinced about the technology. And I began designing a small house over 1.5 cents, 60 square meters of land. And I had a huge challenge. And one of the first buildings that I did, and that was a huge experience in the sense, it didn't have proper rooms. As we think about a house, we talk about proper rooms, so many bedrooms, so many. It had like one seamless space. There's a living space, there's a small dining space, The bedroom was a bed itself. It is a raised platform where they put a mattress, where my friend Velappan, his wife, and his small little tiny tot could sleep together. The bed was the bed space for him. The only private space in that particular house was a small toilet. And then I had to address his basic, not the physical requirement, but his metaphysical requirement. He wanted to, the one-liner design brief that was given to me, but he wanted a space where he could breathe letters. Books were his only physical asset. Let me tell you, books were his only physical assets. He wanted to have the world of letters around him. And this house, the core of this house, was a small library, a circular library that I built for him, where he could see the books, not cased books, where he could feel the books, he could smell the letters, and he was a writer, mind you. And the whole house was, centered around a small library. So it's a small library, a small living space, small dining space, a bed space, and that was the house. Just a few decades back. Interesting thing happened after that. A very interesting thing happened there. That boy was hardly 2 years old. His son was 2 years old at the time. But unfortunately later, almost a decade later, Velappan went away. He died. I lost connection with the family. So one day, a fine young man was walking to my house, to my office, and said, "Uncle, do you remember me?" I didn't have a clue, because I saw this little boy as a 2-year-old, infant. This boy comes in and introduces himself. "Uncle, I am so-and-so's son." My God, I couldn't believe that. This tiny is very fine. He said, "I'm working in Infosys now. I'm an IT engineer now." And he wanted to get married to somebody. He wanted a space for, that little house didn't have space for another family. So he wanted a small room above the little house that I built. I said, "Look, my young friend, you have resources now. You're working in the IT sector." He said one little sentence to me, which I will never ever forget. He said, "Uncle, I grew up in this house. I had my engineering education staying in the house. I love every corner of that house. I love very limited house, probably 325 square feet of house. I loved every corner of it because that's the space that molded me. And now I know that I have the resources, I'm in the IT sector, getting a fat salary and things like that. But when I get married, I want my girl to know about this particular environment that made me. And that's exactly why I want to build another room on top of that. And I don't want to leave that premise, because that's the premise that made me. For an architect, I'm telling you, it's a very touching moment for an architect. You do things, you build houses, you design houses for one individual. I built that house for Velappan. Normally that is where I differ from some of the other architects. You build a house, you always build a house with an identity for some person. I've never built two houses alike. I built for a person with a name and an identity. This identity, Velappan's house, his house, is special to me because it responded to his needs. And look at the legacy. The son also remembers that. And he also doesn't want to leave that premise. That's how you should actually, in future, when you design houses, you should do that. You should break the hold. Go into that. It's not a landscape. It's not only the context. It's also the mindscape that should decide about the design requirements. Yeah.